No.
Darn it.
It's a fruit drink.
As long as there's not a label on the bottle, you can get away with most anything.
Good.
Gentlemen, I believe
Okay.
we're live on YouTube. So,
All right, you ready, Larry? Okay. Okay, call the
Hey,
meeting of the Broadband
what?
Authority. Pardon me? Call the meeting of the Broadband Authority to order. The first item, let's go around and identify the location for each of the board members. Mr. Johnson, you're District 1, you get to start.
I am at my home at 13451 Albano Road, Barbersville, Virginia.
Okay. And I am at my home at 22373 Berry Run Road, Orange, Virginia. Mr. Goodman.
I am at my home at 11464 Rapidan Road in Orange, Virginia.
And Mr. Crozier.
I am at my home. Hello. Hi, I am at my home at 9651 Meadows Road, Locust Grove, Virginia.
And Mr. Frame.
And I'm at my home, 103 Woodland Trail, Locust Grove, Virginia.
All right. Thank you all for coming in out of the beautiful weather. I know most of us were on the beach earlier today and doing lovely things like that, but welcome to the cool. We have an agenda. Any changes or modifications to the agenda? Okay.
So moved to approve.
Have a motion and a second. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Unanimous? Okay. On the consent agenda, we have the minutes from our May 5th meeting and the renewal of the federal engineering contract. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay. Have a motion, a second? Did I hear a second? Okay.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay, new business. One of the primary reasons for asking you to meet today was to really report on and begin the discussion of the rollout plan for fiber. As you know, we set out on this venture several years ago, basically with the goal of providing what we call nearly universal availability for the residents and businesses of the county. We knew at the time that was a challenging hurdle to try to handle, and we've been working ever since to chip away at that and make progress. But now it's time, I think, really to turn up the heat and begin the process of adopting a plan and describing to the citizens of the county what we're going to do and when we're going to do it. So for the last several months, the broadband team with Mark and Lewis and I, and a great shout out to GIS Jim Whipp has been instrumental in helping us pull this plan together. So what you're going to see today is admittedly a fairly aggressive plan. It's designed to take place in phases over the next 36 months. And the target is to, at the end of that 36 months, have broadband available, honest to God, fiber to the residents, fiber to the business, fiber to home broadband to something on the order of about 85% of the county. That's a big step from where we are today. Of course, to do that, this 36-month plan has some big pieces to it. There's about 240 miles of new fiber laterals that I'm actually calling neighborhood laterals, because these are the runs that will come off of the core network, which exists today, that we built either as part of collaboration with the schools or as part of the public safety system to the towers. So building from those existing core network fiber runs, a new 240 miles worth of neighborhood laterals. This will be on both VDOT roads and VDOT right-of-ways, as well as quite a few private roads. As you know, we still have a lot of privately owned, privately maintained roads in the county, not individual driveways, but private roads serving developments. There's about this 36-month plan and these 240 miles, our estimate is will reach about 6,000 households. So the plan is divided into 3 phases, approximately 12 months each, although not necessarily hard start and stop dates for the phases, but roughly speaking, the what we're calling phase 5, all the first 4 phases being what we've accomplished to date so far. Phase 5 would begin this July, meeting right away, and phase 6 would then begin in July approximately of next year, and phase 7 then in July of 2022. This whole 36-month plan is going to need some new funding. In round numbers, it's about $10 million spread over the 36 months over the basically next 3 fiscal years as it works out. And county administrator is aware of that number and is working to develop some scenarios and some options for us as to how we might best find that money and fund this. One of the main things we wanted to do today was to really drill down into these 3 phases. How did we get there? What roads are included? And about when would it take place? Mark has been heavily involved in this. And so, Mark, if you want to sort of pick it up here and describe the phases and the process, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Jim. Jim talked a lot about 3 phases. The 3 phases he's referring to are phases 5, 6, and 7. Obviously, there were 4 phases before those, and there will be phases after those, because there is no way that we could complete this in the next 3 years. So what I'd like to do is go over sort of where we've been and where we are now, and then where we're hopefully going to go. What we called phase 1 was the original, what we refer to as the backbone. It was money paid. It was a project paid for by about 80% federal money, the E-rate funds for the school system. The county piggybacked on top of that, added a lot of extra fibers in the conduit in the build, in the original build, so that we saved money. And that was phase 1. That connected up all of the schools across the county. Phase 2 was the public safety towers, a project that's been going on in parallel with the broadband, has been the upgrade to the public radio system. And there were new towers built, and we included extra fiber to all of those towers to also aid in the broadband project. And of course, for instance, the towers were down on Flat Road, they were on Wilderness Shores, they were on Mountain Track, they were just off of 33 in Barbersville, and then they were at the old Prospect Heights Middle School, or TIAC, in the town of Orange. And so that was phase 2. Phase 3 involved actually getting our fiber plugged into something that would make it something other than a lawn ornament, which is a connection to Culpeper. And we did that 2 different ways in 2 different directions through SEGRA and REC. And I also want to state that, you don't necessarily finish every phase before you go to the next phase. So there are still things that are going on in connection with those 2. But phase 3 got us connected to the outside world whether we're literally connected yet, but it's in process. Phase 4 was simply hooking up the county buildings in the town of Orange and the airport and a few things like that. Now we're at phase 5, which is where it kind of starts to get exciting, because we're actually going to start having citizens in Orange County be able to have something they haven't had before in the underserved areas, which is broadband access. The authority members have been provided with some list of roads that look like this. If you count up all the roads across Orange County, it's over 900 roads in Orange County. Now, obviously, those are not all public roads. Some of them are private. A lot of them are private roads, but they are private roads with a lot of houses on them. So we had a sort of a monumental job. I was thinking earlier today, what if instead of building fiber, what if there were only 5 roads in the county? You had 33 on one end and 3 on the other, and you had 20 and 5, 22 and 15. What if those were the only roads in Orange County, and we decided we were going to build a bunch of other roads so we could hook up as many houses as possible? Just thinking about it kind of makes me want to pull my hair out. Luckily, we start out with roads, and that's a good place to start to run your fiber. But you've got to try to prioritize and figure out, because everybody would like to be first. Nobody wants to be last, but you have to prioritize and say, okay, what order are we going to go in here? So I don't know if Larry's got, does Larry have any of the maps loaded up that he can
Got
show
it.
us?
No,
Yeah,
sir.
like that.
Got it.
Do you have them, Larry?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. All right. Well, for people out in the viewing audience, you're going to have to kind of take this on faith, but this is the map of Orange County, and there's a lot of little squiggly lines in various colors all over it. And basically what we did with phase 5 is said, where can we hook up the most houses for the least amount of money to get this thing rolling? And so phase 5 is approximately 115 miles of new fiber. And it will hook up approximately 3,800 homes, which is about 32 homes per fiber mile. Phase 6, which will commence next July, is about 74 miles. It will hook up 1,320 homes, theoretically, of course. We don't hook them up unless you want them hooked up, and that is about 18 homes per mile. And then phase 7, which is the third phase in the 3 that Jim mentioned, there will be that will be an additional 50 miles with about 846 homes and about 17 homes per mile. So we're not starting in one end of the county and building out. We're starting in various places. If you look at your maps to the Broadband Authority members, you will see the green. That is all of phase 5. There's green pretty much across the county. It's in every district. It's in every part of the county, and that's virtually true of the other colors as well. Phase 6 is blue, and then phase 7 is kind of orange. When we get done with those phases, we will be at something like 75% of what's currently unserved will be served. So the project doesn't stop there, because we want to get it out, as Jim says, nearly universal. And there'll probably be some arguments about what nearly means, but there is a phase 8, which would be the phase beyond this, and there you see the number of households per mile drop all the way down to 9, and you're looking at a lot of mileage and not a lot of houses. But we're not going to leave those people hanging, but they are going to have to be a little bit more patient. Something that's extremely critical for everybody to understand is that these maps and these plans are working drafts. They're not finalized. Most of these lines that you see on the map, they haven't been engineered yet. And until they're engineered, they're extremely preliminary. Some of the lines are being engineered as we speak, but the vast majority of them still have to be engineered. And until they're engineered, they're open to changes and modifications. And frankly, that's one of the things that Jim and I are hoping that the other members of the Broadband Authority can help us with. Please look this over, and if you see something that doesn't look right, let us know, because there's a lot of anomalies across the county that are unless you actually know the road specifically and know the situation, you won't really understand it. For instance, there are people who are Orange County residents, they live in Orange County, but their access is through a road that's in a neighboring county. I strongly suspect that there are some of those people that we have missed simply because they're not showing up on the roads in Orange County. There are other situations where there may be a driveway that we have referred to as a private road, and we may be showing the people on that driveway being in phase 8 simply because their driveway doesn't have enough houses on it to get it into one of the earlier phases. But the reality may be that they will simply be a lateral off of phase 5 or 6 or 7. So the point I'm trying to make is that you can't treat these maps as being absolutely 100% correct. There will be a lot of changes along the way as we try to do this in a way that makes the most sense. We get to the most people in the quickest amount of time for the least money. Also, one final thing, and I'll shut up. Our vision for these first 3 phases is that we're looking at this additional 10 million in funding to fund those next three phases, 5, 6, and 7. Phase 8, our plan is that will be funded out of proceeds from the first 3, the phases 5, 6, and 7. So there will be income coming in by that time from our customers, our citizens, and that will be money that we can use to build out to the most remote corners of the county. Any questions or?
One question, Mark. We going on state roads, we have the ability to use the right-of-ways of the state roads for the connections. What about going down private roads?
Private roads, there will need to be right-of-way worked out with whether it's a homeowners association or some kind of road maintenance association. All these things are different, and that's something that's got to be worked out. Excuse me, virtually on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Well, the reality is, if they want the internet, you either give us an easement or go without. I mean, it's
right.
Like who's going to bargain against us on that?
Sure.
Well, yeah. I understand, but if you've got to go get easement on every property all the way down the road,
it's not a lot of work.
Okay. All right.
But one of the things that we've talked about, and it's by no means yet a decision, but it's something that I think we should consider, is that on private roads that we engage the users of the road, whether it's through an HOA or some group of people in the community decide that they really want internet, and so they become champions of the cause, if you will. And we essentially rely on those users to get their friends and neighbors together to create the easements that we need.
Okay.
With VDOT, of course, we file a permit, give them the engineering drawings, pay a fee, they review it, and then maybe make some changes, but give us the approval. There's no such mechanism in place. You're right, Lee, in terms of these private roads, and so I don't think it's within the manpower ability of the Broadband Authority to go seek out all this. As Tom says, it's not necessarily a big lift, but all you need are a couple of neighbors that are reluctant, and it can hold up the project. And so I'm not saying that we would delay building a particular private roads community lateral, but it could affect it, certainly if those easements aren't readily available to the Broadband Authority, because we can't move without them.
Well, one point I would make too, Lee, is that every time for every customer, there's going to have to be an easement agreement. So, even though let's say, I live on Route 33, we've run fiber down 33, but to go from 33 to the customer's house, there's going to have to be an easement agreement with that customer. So, just like the electric company has to have an easement, across your property when they run power, or the phone company. So we're gonna have thousands of easement agreements.
I understand that. It seems to me that given Jim's comment about us not being able to do that, we've got a substantial education process for groups to figure out how to get the easements, to get their fiber into their communities.
Yeah, and I think we can model this after, as Mark mentioned, what the phone companies and the telephone companies do. I mean, they have essentially a standardized agreement that you execute when you sign up to get power or phone. And I think we should, we want to make it as simple and as standardized as we can. But each community could have its own particular vision of this, and so that's why I think it would behoove many communities, as they see these plans, to start having conversations with their neighbors and see where people stand. Because the other aspect of this is, when we move into a community, building one of these community laterals and start hooking up customers, we want to hook up, all people that are interested while we're there, because to go back 3 or 4 months later,
Different price tag,
different impact, different cost, and so forth. As a matter of fact, in a couple of minutes, I'm going to talk about some of the terms that we envision in the service agreement, and one of them could directly affect that idea of, if you live in an area that has a dozen homes on a road, it's in everyone's interest that you get everybody informed and deciding as to whether or not they're ready for service in the first volley.
Well, one thing, I think an additional point is that as we're starting to build out, obviously staff is going to know what's the next neighborhood coming up. It's going to be very important for Lewis and his staff to keep up to date on that and sort of try to get out ahead, so that may be even, getting in touch with the supervisor in that district and saying, hey, you need to go talk to the folks in this neighborhood and let them know what's coming, so they can start getting ready for it.
I can imagine a lot of small community meetings to explain what's going on.
Yes.
Right. Let me address the topic of the service agreement. Obviously, for an individual user, whether it's a residence or a business, as Mark said earlier, we're not going to come hook your house up without you giving us permission and actually wanting us to do that. That process, as you might imagine, needs to be described and managed according to some type of service agreement. And I've looked at a number of different examples. They range from 30-page legal documents that you can barely read and certainly not understand, to a situation where the agreement might be 8 or 10 pages, but it incorporates by reference documents that are online that can be, literally 100 pages of fine print of this and that. Our goal is to not go to quite that extreme, but we do have to cover some essential elements. One of the things, and this is, I think, a decision that this board needs to make, is do we require people to sign up for terms? Right now, we're thinking in terms of maybe the initial sign up would be for a 12-month term, but it could be a monthly agreement after that. Part of the reason for having that initial 12-month term, as opposed to a 36 or 24, whatever other possibility, one of the reasons for having 12 is that we are planning to, as part of the normal monthly charge, to include what's known as customer premise equipment, CPE. This is the equipment that is either on the customer's house or inside the customer's house to actually connect the fiber, but then would also include a wireless router such that the service could be available throughout the household wirelessly. But would also include a 24/7 monitoring service so that we could troubleshoot and frankly provide assistance to the individual homeowner if they have problems. So because of that additional investment on the part of the Broadband Authority to put that equipment, that CPE, and the monitoring service in place, we needed to at least have the customer say, yeah, I'll give you a try for at least 12 months. And so we're thinking in terms of having an initial term of 12 months. Also, as mentioned before, part of that service agreement would have to provide the access easement to the property, again, much like the phone company or the telephone system. On the issue of installation fee, would there be an upfront installation fee? Yes.
Do you recover your all of the individual home costs in that 12 months?
We are tinkering with the rates such that probably not quite, but it's close enough.
Okay.
And along that line, on the question of installation cost, because we have situations where one user could be 50 feet or 60 feet off of one of these community laterals, and another could be 550 feet or more, we think that it's the best use of our funds and to achieve some level of equity that we charge what amounts to a per foot installation cost. And it would be per feet of service drop. This is the fiber that actually ends up on the house or in the house, running from the community lateral and the associated equipment to the house. So if you're very, very close, your installation fee would be fairly modest. Where right now it looks like that cost to us would be something on the order of $1.50 per foot. So if you live 50 feet off of the service off of the community lateral, you're looking at a $75 one-time installation fee. If you're 1,000 feet, then it grows quite significantly. But so that's another decision that we have to end up on. The costing that we've done so far and the analysis that we've done in terms of distances, there's so much variability in that segment of cost or those distances that it looks like that a per foot fee is in order. The other thing I mentioned is that for the private roads, I think it's imperative that the persons or entities that own the road or live along the road take a fairly active role in helping us with the final planning, the communicating with the neighborhood, but particularly the gaining of the required easements or use permits, whatever those kinds of things happen to be. There'll be some other terms in terms of the service agreement. That, you know, if you decide to back out, then we need to get our CPE back and all that kind of stuff. But the basic important terms, I think, are the ones that I outlined there. I've had a couple of almost hallway conversations with county attorney about preparing this, and we've agreed to get together fairly soon and begin working through some of these to let you take a look at it. But I just wanted to identify for your purposes, as well as to begin describing to the community what we're thinking about in terms of what kind of an agreement they would have to execute in order to get service. So any questions about that or any thoughts on it?
Well, I've got a question. If you're talking about a private road, say up in Mark's district, you got Barbara Drinkwater's place where you have Barbara and her husband, or you've got a couple houses at the very front, then Barbara's house back, and the subdivision back behind it where all the houses are. Since that's a private road and you're talking about fees, we're not just pulling off a main, or are you considering that lateral that's going to run all the way up through the subdivision? Would that be something the county is providing and they're pulling away from that, or are they pulling away from the state highway?
Well, the easy answer is if you look at this stack of paper that has 24 pages, everything on this list is proposed to be built by and paid for by the county, by the Broadband Authority. So it's only extensions from this.
All right. That's
So
what I thought for one.
Yeah, so if I didn't catch the name of the road, but if you look on this list, if you find that road name, then that road, for whatever mileage is in here, would be part of the Broadband Authority's build.
Jim, I don't mean to question you, but is that correct? Because there is phase 8 is in here, is on this list.
I should have said it should 5, 6, and 7. Yeah, phase 8 is to be funded ultimately by the Broadband Authority, but from revenues of the Broadband Authority. So I think what I said is it's still true, but phase 8 is a slightly different animal in that it's going to be further in time and funded from the revenues of the Broadband Authority as it operates.
To Teal's question, that's a very good question, and that's one of the things we're grappling with, because, you know, do you call it is this a lateral or is it a fiber drop? Okay, they're the same thing. A lateral is a big fiber drop. Okay, so we're calling the fiber drop is what we're calling it from the lateral to the house, but really it's just an extension. So and there's also another issue of sometimes it's going by the road is not necessarily going to be the best way to go. There are going to be situations where we want to go overland from one house to another, or, you know, we might come off of the main trunk, go back in a subdivision, and then maybe there's another subdivision that we can hop over to and continue from there, rather than running another line off of the main trunk. So there's a lot of moving pieces here, and we're just going to have to deal with it as we come to them. And Lewis and his staff are going to they're going to have plenty to do through this process.
Yeah, the general intent, though, Teal, is that if, to the extent that a line is serving multiple households, that would be, wherever possible, that would be part of the phase 5, 6, or 7 plan that the Broadband Authority would furnish. When that last piece to get to an individual, or it could be a couple sometimes, but basically to an individual home, that's the service drop that would be on the per foot installation cost basis. Because we're not trying to penalize somebody and have them pay for something that others actually benefit from.
Okay.
But it has to be engineered to really know how that plays out in reality.
Okay.
And I got a good example here where I live, that to get to me, you'd have to pass, half a dozen other houses that are on a totally private road that's owned by a lot of people. And so, that's one that could fall in lots of directions. If other people want the service, there may be a sharing. If they don't, somebody like me might have to have a 1,000-foot service.
Okay.
Or wait till phase 8.
Well, my friend that was with me the other day when I was talking with Mark, was kind of wondering about that, particularly when he found out he was in phase 8. He did say, well, at least I'm before the cemetery. And actually, I pull up and the cemetery road is in phase 7. So he's behind the cemetery. So I'll get them to start thinking about the HOA on that one then. So.
Yeah, I can't underestimate or understate the importance of the communities getting involved, because we've sort of jokingly in many of our conversations say that it is not the intent of the Broadband Authority to hire 50 guys and put them in trucks running around the county. That's not an efficient use of taxpayer money if we can avoid it, and there's a role that individuals can play in informing themselves and helping to inform their communities and getting people together to cooperatively participate in this.
What about people who are already have broadband service, all those yellow areas on the map, but they want to try to get the higher data rates that fiber will bring? Can they come to the community, come to the Broadband Authority with some options?
We have talked about that, and we think that just as we're going to be doing some pilot tests in the early before we even begin phase 5, we think that there will be some opportunities to do that. We've tried to be very careful that we target the taxpayers' money to the unserved or primarily underserved areas. And but that doesn't mean that there aren't other parts of this that we take a look at. I know there's a couple of cases where there's service by other companies that are passing by the neighborhood, but they don't actually enter. And so that might be a case where we try a couple of things to see how interested the community is and the like. It's not been ruled out, but it's not part of the next 36-month plan directly.
Understand.
Yeah, and a lot of this we're working from, to put it mildly, imperfect data. So there are things that, from what we've been able to learn so far, this area is served, but then there's always the possibility that, maybe a third of that area is served. On paper, it looks like the whole area is, but maybe only a third is. And so, I mean, again, I don't want to overuse the word anomaly, but there are plenty of anomalies when you get into a project like this. And like, the case that Teal was talking about, we're going to have to take those on a case-by-case basis and look at them. And it could well be that somebody who right now is showing up on the map in phase 8 may well be moved into one of the other phases when we get out there and the engineering is done and we actually see what we're dealing with.
I think the principles that we have in terms of earlier phases have a higher getting more homes connected
Yield.
per mile, or however you ever measure that. I think that's a principle that needs to be clearly and emphatically stated, so that as people begin to say, well, why am I not next? And I should be, I need it quicker because I've got a job that requires gigabit connectivity. And those are the things I think the principles we've already stated need to be very clear to the public as a whole.
The other thing that drives this as well, Lee, is that there has to be, due to prior construction, there has to be a proximate connection back into the network. We can't jump over an area. You can't service an area unless you've got a place to plug it into that you built either as part of the earlier phases or
Yes.
early of the phase there. So there's a construction limitation as well. You start leapfrogging and it gets outrageously expensive.
Understand.
By the way, I will say if for some reason more money decides to flow into these initiatives, we can always split the phases or add the phases or accelerate the phases. We tried to find something that we thought we could actually do from a construction standpoint and a material availability standpoint, as well as within the financial capability of the county, because as we all know from other discussions, we're not going to get any help. It's just not in the cards. And so if this is something that the community is committed to, then we've got to do it within our means. It's an unfortunate situation, but that's the reality that we're in.
Well, and certainly also we don't want to overpromise. We want to underpromise, if anything. So, like Jim says, I mean, it's certainly possible that things will get rolling and we'll be able to speed up this process. But this time frame, this schedule was one that we felt was realistic and that we could bring it off. Certainly, if we can speed it up, we will. We're not going to hold back just because our schedule is written a certain way.
It would seem that the construction is not the long pole in the tent, but all of the arrangements with groups and getting paperwork taken care of would be and getting decisions from the community, the members that would sign up. All those would be the longer pole in the tent.
Yep. That's why we need help from, people within the community that have the local knowledge and know the individuals and can help us find our way through all that. That is a big task.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns, comments? Let's not understate what this is all about. It is aggressive. It is an enormous amount of work in a fairly short time frame. But I think that's, as I hear from people, this is what they're expecting.
Well, it is what we promised.
It is. I guess I'll put a question out. Is a motion in order to proceed along these lines? I don't think we can make a motion necessarily to very specifically adopt any one or more of the phases or the funding or anything like that. But I think it would be good to know that this is generally according to what an acceptable plan would look like.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think a motion's in order because I think it would be so vague and ambiguous as to be,
Yeah, that's why I'm sort of.
A head nod. I think you just have everybody nod your head up and down.
Consensus?
Yeah, maybe that's right. Sort of a general consensus that this is
the right approach.
this is
Thumbs up.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. I see no old business, other business. Louis, we've been at this a while, but if you want to give us a few headlines in terms of your program management report, I think there's been a lot going on. So far we've talked about things to come. You've got a lot to report on that already happened. So if you want to take a few minutes.
Hey, can you hear me?
You're on mute. Oh, there you go. Yep.
Okay, to give you an update, we signed an agreement with Segler back in December to connect fiber to Equinex. We have taken possession of it. last month. The network equipment it was approved in May. All of it will be delivered by July 24th. We have received some equipment already, and we've got contractors stacking electronic equipment into towers this week and node sites that we have completed. Also, we're looking through the customer interface and fiber network service support proposals. We had our first meeting today, trying to shortlist it. We're trying to come up with a plan, which is going to be very critical to our customer support. When someone has access, have a problem, it could be a computer problem other than the internet. So that's critical that we have a good company in there to provide that service. So we're going through that. Buyers Engineering, that you signed agreement with them in May, would like to report they have finished the design for the western portion of the county. That was based on the $3 million budget that was originally we put in this budget, but we discussed earlier, we are adding some additional miles and eventually some additional funding sources. So we're going to have to come back and hit up some areas on the western side of the county. But until we had a direction, I didn't want to proceed with additional. Next, we're the public safety facilities has been completed with fiber. We've got it completed. We're just waiting for a couple sites to be completed. TAC is waiting on a power easement before they can power it up, before we can install our equipment in that place. The Strawberry node cabinet, you approved the easement last meeting. We should have power to that facility tomorrow. They were doing some work today, I noticed. The next facility, we talked to the public safety project manager, and they're telling me that the data center floor is going to be ready by the end of this month. So we could actually put some racks in there and splicing up fiber. So I know we had a concern that how secure that's going to be before we put something in that Mr. White said. So I've got to do some research, but I'm not sure if anyone knows on this call, is that going to be secure site, because we don't want anything to disappear of electronics at that facility. The next facility, the Barbersville Tower, we're waiting for going through the SHPO requirement. The COVID-19 has got them shut down partial. So we're kind of waiting on that site to finish being constructed, but we might end up having to bypass that to get the network up and tested. Another thing that I like to talk to you about is we still got a delay on one leg going up to Culpeper. Reppan Electric ran into an easement issue. They're building around this person's property. So as we get ready to install equipment and get connectivity to Culpeper, I don't really want to go live until we actually got some redundancy, because that would be the biggest nightmare if something fails. So plus I'm trying not to do work 2 or 3 different times. So we've got a lot of balls in the air. We're trying to moving target, but we're trying to, I don't have a date when we're going to start doing our pilots. You got more detail and report. If you got any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Okay. Any questions? There's a lot going on. I think we've assembled a team of really good people that help us, whether it's the fiber installers or the engineers marking the routes and things. Have been very responsive, and we're hoping to keep those together and rolling. So, okay. Information. Yes, go ahead.
For your information, our contractor has already started laterals, customer laterals off Cameron Drive, and also the subdivision off of Lovers Lane. So they are starting construction of this phase 5 as we're continuing on while we bring the network up. We just won't connect citizens up. I want to let you know we're still making progress. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay. As a footnote on that, I think it's important, the one measure of the team working well together is in order to get permits from VDOT to use their right of way, we have to give them engineering drawings that are to their and project plans that are to meet their specifications. And so far, not only has VDOT been very cooperative, but they've been very complimentary of the work that they've received, and their turnaround time is actually phenomenal. They are not the holdup. It's really good to have that kind of working relationship that and responsiveness from an agency that let's face it gets their share of criticism. So,
As compared to some of the other state agencies we deal with.
thank you. You're absolutely right. Okay. Anything else before this meeting? No, I need another motion.
I move to adjourn.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you all for
Thank you.
being here. See you all later.